Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where, like many of you, I had a very bad initial reaction to the news late last night that Warner Brothers is developing a Matrix reboot or relaunch. The Hollywood Reporter used both words in their report. A reboot would mean that they would wipe away the previous story that had been done by the Wachowskis, and a relaunch would mean that would probably stay in continuity, but they would start at a point where they didn't have to deal with that directly, right? So that's the difference between the two words. But so again, while my initial reaction was, hell no, why do you gotta remake everything, Hollywood? My second reaction was, well, I do think the Wachowskis never really lived up to the promise of the original film. Like the Wachowskis always do, they had a really convoluted mythology. The second film was pretty good, but the third film was bad. But I think even more importantly, I didn't get nearly enough wire fu or bullet time. Remember when Trinity first did that amazing move when she did like the crane kick in the air, and it just everybody fell in love with visual effects, action sequences, fight scenes, and The Matrix is really the one that started that whole thing. You can see how much it's evolved since then, but they were the first spark. I don't think that they ever had anything as cool, because still, when anybody wants to have a picture to represent the Matrix films, it's usually Trinity doing that, or Keanu Reeves stopping all the bullets from the second film. Those are like the two things. And considering they made 3 movies, there should be some more pictures. All right, so it's like iconic imagery from the film. Also, though, they're considering Michael B. Jordan to star, which is, I think, good and bad. I love Michael B. Jordan. I think he's incredibly talented. He's a little difficult, I think, personally, particularly in how he handled the whole Johnny Storm controversy. Boy, he and Finn Jones over on Iron Fist both need to go to publicity class on how to react to SJWs online, right? Actually, I think Michael B. Jordan wasn't dealing with SJWs. He was dealing with the opposite. But both of them kind of imploded, right, and shot themselves in the foot. But, I think that Michael B. Jordan, of course, could recover with his performance in Black Panther. He was very good in Creed, but everybody really paid attention to Sylvester Stallone there. And also Ryan Coogler behind the camera. Now, speaking of behind the camera, that's another problem with this. I would be a lot more excited if they had better talent involved. Right now, Zack Penn, who's worked proliferally on the X-Men films, a minion of Bryan Singer. Interestingly, it's a good time to be a Bryan Singer minion, because Michael Dougherty, of course, is doing Godzilla King of Monsters over at legendary Warner Brothers. And this is also Warner Brothers. So it's interesting that Fox isn't hiring Bryan Singer's minions, right? They're like, no thanks, we're trying to get away from Bryan Singer. So I think that hiring Zack Penn is really, why even bother if that's who you're putting in charge of it? For instance, the only reason I think people are excited about Blade Runner 2049, except for Edward James Olmos, although maybe he's just bluffing and he's going to surprise show up in the sequel, but because Denis Villeneuve, Edward James Olmos is, I saw a headline where he's kind of throwing some shade that he's like, I'm not going to talk about that, I'm not in it, but I'm going to kind of talk about it. But anyway, Denis Villeneuve is handling the Blade Runner 2049, and so everybody feels pretty good about it. So the fact that I didn't get, I'd say, a more artistically minded, highbrow filmmaker to take it over from the Wachowskis, and it's kind of embarrassing that they wouldn't reapproach the Wachowskis either, right? They're like, you guys are still, in the prime of your filmmaking, but we don't want you anywhere near something that you created. It's like, that's just how much the Wachowskis have just fallen off the map. And it's their own fault. I feel bad for them, but I think that they're very undisciplined, although talented filmmakers. It's really a shame, because I really enjoy, I'm one of the only people who stands up for Speed Racer, because I think it's a great movie. And I understand what they were trying to do. It's very anime, right? Very, I think, reminiscent of the Speed Racer comics, or manga and animation. But they've just gone further and further off the reservation, things like Jupiter Ascending, etc. They just refuse to tell a coherent story. So I probably wouldn't hire them either. But I can't believe they wouldn't be involved in any capacity. Maybe they refused. But also, if I were Disney, I would be like, holy crap, I better put a rush order on Tron 3, because it's kind of the same story, except it's the reverse, where in the Matrix, everybody, they plug themselves into this computer world where they can do things like wire fu and bullet time, and they're hackers, though. Tron is computer living computer programs to have like their AI going into the real world, but they can probably do cool things in the real world because they're computer programs. So anyway, I think they're a little similar. And I think so. I would want my Tron to come out before a new Matrix. All right, so speaking of Disney, Beauty and the Beast is truly becoming a box office beast. It was announced yesterday that Fandango has said that, well, Fandango announced it and Disney ran with it. They were like, thank you for the headline. Maybe, Disney was like, how are we selling over there? Maybe you want to tell everyone? And Fandango was like, sure. In the 17 years that Fandango has been in business, Disney has the biggest pre-sales ever for a family movie. And it's also outselling Captain America Civil War, Avengers Age of Ultron, and Batman v Superman at the same point. That is amazing. And it's also split right down the middle in terms of who's going. 44% are families, and 43% are adults going either on a date, or I thought this was weird, or with a significant other, meaning dates in the past have worked out, now that's locked down and you guys still go to movies together, or with friends. Now, it has to get $166 million to be the top opening ever for March. That's what Batman v Superman opened with last year, so that's the number to beat. And if it does top that, that would also put it in the top 10 openings of all time. As we discussed on Movie Math on Monday, it was pegged at 120 to 150, but it's selling so well that I think it's going to get close to 200. I think it's going to be really big. I really can't wait. And as many of you have pointed out to me, it plays like almost every hour at your local theater. If you're going to go and see Beauty and the Beast, you should go this weekend. Be part of the cultural event. Be part of the party. You should definitely go. And don't forget to tweet me a picture of you with your ticket stub at the theater, or, with a poster with your friends, because I'm going to be including that in Movie Math on Monday. Now, somebody who really wants to get into the movie business is Netflix, although they want you to watch them at home. And they just made a big hire yesterday, and that it was rumored to be in the works, but Scott Stuber is now the head of Netflix's film division, making Netflix like any other movie studio where they have a head of film, film production. Just like we hear Alan Horn over at Disney. Toby Emmerich, I think, just took over at Warner Brothers. You hear these names all the time. We get a little. I think Disney is interesting that Alan Horn is the top person, but each division has to some degree its own head. At least, especially Marvel and Star Wars, with Kathleen Kennedy and Kevin Feige. But anyway, it's a big deal for Netflix to put their hierarchy like this, basically copying a movie studio, because that's exactly what they want to be. Although they're not releasing them in theaters. iPic made a deal. iPic is a very small theater chain, a very high-end theater chain. It's very cool. They have one in New York City. They're a lot of fun. They serve meals. It's really cool. It's kind of like Alamo Drafthouse a little bit. They're going more for like a cool restaurant nightclub theme, where I think Alamo Drafthouse is more like for cinephiles. But anyway, they've made a deal. They release Netflix movies, but for the most part, because they're available on streaming, other theaters, other theater companies don't want anything to do with Netflix movies, so they can't get them into theaters. But that is not going to stop Netflix from seeing what they can do. And they have of course, this is a big year for them with Bright, Okja. They started out with the Adam Sandler movies, but now they're moving the Brad Pitt War Machine. They're really moving aggressively into the space. And they actually hired Scott Stuber away from Paramount. Netflix hires people away from a lot of companies these days. Of course, they recently got into it with Fox. I think actually there's a lawsuit going on between the two companies because Fox is accusing Netflix of poaching, getting people to break their contracts with Fox. And Fox is saying, what the hell? That's the whole point of a contract. And then Netflix goes, just like in the Founder with Michael Keaton, the McDonald's movie, contracts are like hearts, they were made to be broken. Hilarious. That's a great movie. That's a very good movie about business. But so they did hire this guy away from Paramount, and Paramount's having a really bad time because Michael DeLuca also turned down the job. They wanted him to run up Brad Gray was just fired because Paramount came in dead last at the box office last year. And also, Paramount was supposed to be getting a lot of money from a Chinese investor, and the Chinese investor is so appalled at Paramount's performance last year that they're refusing to give the money that they promised until they can have a seat at the table creatively, or at least talk to Paramount about what the heck's going on. But anyway, why hire Scott Stuber? I think he's a weird choice. He was at Universal for a while. He helped shepherd in the Fast and Furious and Bourne franchises at Universal when he was their head of the motion picture division, and he was a co-head with Mary Parent. And he and Mary Parent went on their own, and they created a production company that had a deal with Universal, and they've done a number of films. They eventually did split up, but Scott Stuber's name as a producer is on films like the comedies, like Ted, Identity Thief, that Jason Bateman, Melissa McCarthy movie, also Central Intelligence. I really liked that movie. It was a solid hit. It wasn't like a huge hit, but that's of course Kevin Hart and Dwayne Johnson. Mary Parent, interestingly enough, now heads Legendary's film division, and she stayed on even though Thomas Tull was just forced to resign by their Chinese owners. Crazy. Everybody's having the same problems. But I think that Scott Stuber, I don't know, I think he's like a company guy. I think he has obviously very good connections. Hollywood's a very political town. I don't think he's like a visionary, but maybe Netflix is like, we want to be a visionary. We want someone who has relationships and can get deals done and add some legitimacy to our film division. Now that I think about it, that's probably why they hired him, right? So we'll see how it turns out. We'll see how these movies turn out. It's very interesting. Also, on a side note, Scott Stuber is also kind of famous for being married to Molly Sims. That's his second wife, but of course, she's the former model, somewhat, you could argue supermodel, who tried to make it as an actress. Didn't work out, but at least she got herself a Hollywood husband. All right, so let's go to the viewer question of the day. This is from ZA, aka Cryptic the Critic over on Twitter, who said, I love it. I've always said the squeaky wheel sometimes does get the grease. And so sometimes you guys use that. And so ZA said, squeaky wheel gets the grease analogy. Do you think in a slow news day you could cover on Morning Movie News Sam Jackson's recent comments? That's a great question. So let's discuss. So recently you might have seen the headline that Sam Jackson, he's been making a lot of headlines lately. He got upset with Ben Carlson, tweeted out a very funny and I think correct tweet. But he also said something where he said, it's annoying that American black actors aren't getting a lot of roles these days, and instead it's going to black actors from the UK. And he said, for instance, in Get Out, Daniel Kaluuya is from the UK. And he said it would have maybe been better to have an American black actor who would have really had their own experiences that Get Out tries to portray in real life to draw on. So that was his comment. And of course, a lot of people are like, what? What are you doing, Sam Jackson? Aren't you just happy that black actors are working? And then Daniel Kaluuya came out Daniel Kaluuya has a writing background. He not only appeared on Skins as an actor, but worked behind the scenes writing some episodes. But he said, I really kind of resent that I'm being asked to prove my blackness. And he said, I have a lot of my own situations of discrimination. He said, particularly as someone who has very dark skin, often the darkest person in the room. And I don't see why I have to, wear those experiences on my sleeve to get, your stamp of approval. And I was like, wow, I'm sure Sam Jackson is sorry he brought that up, because I don't think he expected anyone to come back at him so articulately and powerfully. So good for you, Daniel Kaluuya, although we all love Sam Jackson too. So here's what I think's going on. I think, yes, more British black actors are getting work these days. But that's always been a problem for white actors as well. Everybody talks about the fact that Superman is played by a UK actor, right, et cetera, because I think that we've started to do this, but for a while they had stronger TV over in the UK, so they had a better way to bring up their actors. Also, they had very good drama schools, and then also people kind of build a little bit of a name and experience for themselves in the UK, but they're not known in the US, so they're still kind of a discovery, which is another reason I think that Hollywood tends to cast out of the UK. Also, the UK has been a bit ahead, diversity-wise, in TV, ahead of the United States, also for a while. Now, not in film. They've been having a big problem with film, and in fact, you recently probably saw the headlines that BAFTA is going to try and, really strong-arm films into being more diverse over there. But anyway, in TV, they've had a lot of diversity, but not just in general, but particularly in dramas, where in the United States, a lot of our strong TV shows with black actors are comedies, or they're like Empire is like a soap opera. Even the Shonda Rhimes shows are very soap opera-y. And also their network. Shonda Rhimes' shows are network. It's very hard to transition from network TV to movies. Now cable is so highly regarded that you can transition, but also FX shows is a good place. Like you're starting to see the Atlanta talent move up. That's very exciting. So that's a good example. We just saw Zazie Beetz cast as Domino in Deadpool 2. And Donald Glover's getting a ton of work. So there you can see when the talent exists, it gets work. And I think we're going to keep an eye on what happens with Moonlight's cast, right? Because that's a whole bunch of black actors from America that did a stellar job. So, and it's unusual to have, again, black dramatic films, again, because a lot of the films made are comedies, right? Or they're thrillers, slashers, right? So this is a new trend. So Trevante Rhodes is from Louisiana. He's in the upcoming Predator movie. Andre Holland is from Alabama. I love Andre Holland. He was on The Nick with Clive Owen. He's so talented. Mahershala Ali is from California. Janelle Monáe, Kansas. So these are all American actors, black American actors, African American. And then also, it's worth noting that I think who's behind the camera is going to make a big difference. Ava DuVernay, she cast Andre Holland. He has a supporting role in her upcoming A Wrinkle in Time. And she also, of course, has Storm Reed. She race-bended that role as the lead. That's a big deal. And then, of course, there's Ryan Coogler, who's helped Michael B. Jordan. He's from California. He put Michael B. Jordan on the map, and now he's being considered for the star or one of the stars of the new Matrix movies. So that's what I think is happening. And I think that it's important to get diversity in who's in movies. I'm very happy that they are really casting Middle Eastern talent for not only Aladdin and Jasmine, but they just announced for the upcoming Sinbad movie that they're making that Sinbad will be played by an actor of Middle Eastern descent. So that's really fantastic. But I think that once you start like pigeonholing, like, oh, you have to come from the exact region as the character, I think that's just going to be too big of a hurdle. I think that you want to get somebody who is, in the correct vicinity to make sure that this keeps moving in the right direction. So I don't agree with Sam Jackson's comments. I understand why he made them, but I think that it's not going to be a problem for much longer because Moonlight just put a whole bunch of talent on the board. And also you have to remember that Hollywood only likes stuff that other people have vouched for. So they're not going to go and discover new African-American talent. They need someone in the UK to vouch for it on a TV show or from a drama school. And finally, the US is starting to put out shows that vouch for talent here, like Atlanta and Moonlight. So that's a really big, and also Fruitvale Station, the Ryan Coogler, Michael B. Jordan movie that helped both of their careers and put them on the map. That's really important stuff. So that's the way Hollywood works, and it's the way it works for everyone. It's very interesting. All right, so that's my thoughts on it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. Please write down below what you think today's top 3 stories, ZA's viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching.